Mandela there as well, the daughter of Nelson Mandela. And why, do you ask, are we doing this today? Well, the Minister of Home Affairs laid the foundation for what is going to be happening today a little bit earlier on in the broadcast. But if you missed it, today handing out of the smart ID cards to very important South Africans. And we're not only talking about dignitaries, we're talking about normal South Africans as well. South Africans that have also gathered in this room that are from 80 to 104 years old. Some incredible South Africans with a wealth of history that are going to be among the first recipients of this ID card. Well, I'm not going to tell you too much more because we're going to capture all of this live and you'll be able to see it in the comfort of your own home. The Minister of Home Affairs is standing by to give us a demonstration and also to hand out these ID cards. And I'm going to hand over to her right now. Minister, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Leanne. Good morning, everyone. Morning to our guests present here at the Union Buildings, as well as the viewers, the public of South Africa. I'd like to begin by welcoming our distinguished guests, particularly our Deputy President Motlanthe, former President Mbeki, the first Speaker of a democratic National Assembly, Dr. Frene Ginwala, the companions of former President Nelson Mandela, Mr. Ahmed Kathrada, Mr. Mlangeni, who unfortunately could not be with us today, Mr. Dennis Goldberg, and then, of course, those distinguished South Africans who led the struggles against the past laws. Among them is Mrs. Sophie de Bruyn, who is with us this morning. I'd like to thank each one of them for accepting to be the guinea pigs in this introduction of the Smart ID card to South Africa. On behalf of our department, however, the Department of Home Affairs, I'd like to wish our former president, Mr. Nelson Mandela, a very, very happy birthday. Tata, we are so proud of you today. Your release from prison began the most remarkable political transition any country has ever known. You chose reconciliation over revenge. Your leadership and your moral courage has defined our era of liberation. You taught us the freedom of forgiveness and the power of humility. You are indeed an inspiration to the world. You live in our hearts and in our minds as we celebrate your birthday today and go about honoring your call to us to spend 67 minutes on a good cause. And I assure you, everyone in this room is going to spend their 67 minutes. Today is an extremely special President Nelson Mandela Day. Today we reach another milestone in the process of restoring dignity to South African citizens. Today we begin the process of replacing the ID book with the Smart ID card. We hand Smart ID cards, symbolic of our liberation and development as a nation, to our current president, Jacob Zuma, our deputy president, Kgalema Motlanthe, to former President Thabo Mbeki, former President F.W. de Klerk. We will also hastily get it to Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Tutu. We'll hand it to Mrs. Sophie de Bruyn. And of course, it is the 50th anniversary of the Rivonia trial. So the Rivonia trialists, Mr. Andrew Mlangeni, Mr. Dennis Goldberg, Mr. Ahmed Kathrada, have been and are part of this guinea pig group. And as I said, our former Speaker of our first democratic parliament, or Speaker of the National Assembly, Dr. Frene Ginwala. They represent those who have laid the foundations for our democracy. We also provide the Smart ID card to several senior citizens who symbolize those who fought for our freedom. Remarkably, one of our guest recipients is over 103 years old. In a few weeks' time, we hope to gather here again to mark the anniversary of the 1956 Women's March against the oppressive past laws. We'll all recall that Tata Madiba, Mr. Walter Sisulu, and Chief Albert Luthuli personally burnt passes in defiance of the past laws that stripped the majority of South Africans of their identity and dignity. Hundreds of campaigns over many decades ensured that we find ourselves today in a South Africa that belongs to all who live in it. The ID smart card is a way of affirming citizenship and using digital technology to protect the integrity of our identity as South Africans. It was here at the Union Buildings on May 10th, 1994, that President Mandela became the first president of a democratic South Africa. He issued the following call that surely inspires us all to this day. He stated, "Out of the experience of an extraordinary human disaster that lasted too long, must be born a society of which all humanity will be proud. Our daily deeds as ordinary South Africans must produce an actual South African reality that will reinforce humanity's belief in justice, strengthen its confidence in the nobility of the human soul, and sustain all our hopes for a glorious life for all." We are indeed proud that the family of Mr. Mandela has agreed that he can be among the first recipients of a smart ID card, which will be handed to his daughter, who's present with us today, Ms. Zinzi Mandela. And we thank you most sincerely, Ms. Mandela, for having agreed to do us this honor. Our presence here this morning is one but very modest, yet important response to that call Madiba issued in May 1994. We will call upon you all, the people of South Africa, as we gear up all the officers of the Department of Home Affairs to be ready to receive you to apply for your smart ID card. We introduce it today and hand it to these distinguished ladies and gentlemen, but we recall always that President Mandela has reminded us that the struggle for freedom was fought and won by many. He's but a symbol of that courage, of that strength, that resolute will that reflected all the people of South Africa's rejection of oppression and subjugation of another. So we conclude by wishing our founding president an extremely happy birthday. We're most grateful to the Supreme Being that Tata is with us today and that we can indeed, as a collective present here, wish him happy birthday. Thank you to you all. I believe it's now my pleasure to invite the Deputy President to join me at the podium. I will come down to hand over his smart ID card to him, and like an Oscar winner, he has to open the envelope and make sure that this card indeed belongs to him. And then, of course, as all Oscar winners do, we invite you to address us.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister Pando, for issuing me with this smart ID card. It is truly an honor and a privilege, my privilege to stand before you today on this very special day, Madiba's 95th birthday. And as we wish him many happier returns, we also take this opportunity to wish him a speedy recovery. But let me start off by saluting our centurions who are here with us. The former President Mbeki, the former Speaker of the National Assembly, Dr. Frini Jinwala, our stalwart, Mr. Amat Kathrada, and Ms. Sophie de Bruyn, and all eminent persons here present, the Home Affairs Choir. Thank you very much. You've shown dedication this morning by not only reporting for work so early, but also by singing for us. The publication of Home Affairs, IKAYA, says today marks the distance we've traveled from the Dompas to the smart card. Now, distance in this regard is used in its temporal meaning, not spatial meaning, which means that distance is actually measured by understanding the future as projected by those who came before us. And so, as we mark this distance, we remember that in 1913, our mothers rose and demonstrated against the Dompas in 1913 in Winbeck, and when their husbands came to bail them out, they refused to be bailed out. And so they took a firm stand against the Dompas. And of course, the struggles of our people throughout the years have always been punctuated by demonstrations and arrests occasioned by either failure to produce the Dompas or failure to have the correct stamp in the Dompas, because Africans were regarded as temporary sojourners in a white man's land. And as such, they needed in their Dompasses a stamp from the Department of Bantu Affairs, which read as follows: permitted to be in the magisterial district of such a town. It could be Johannesburg, it could be Pretoria, it could be Welkom, it could be Bloemfontein, it could be any of the towns, whilst under the employment of such, and then of course they will fill in the name of the employer, the firm or authority. And if your Dompas did not have that stamp, where you could be arrested, even if you had the Dompas. So, correctly, the Dompas was a badge of serfdom, modern serfs, because that's what it was all about. It restricted movement of African people. And so I remember in the growing up in townships that literally 2 policemen could arrest hundreds of males who had no dom passes or whose dom passes were without the special. This permit to be in the magisterial area was called a special. They could do so because you had nowhere to run to. You knew that even if you outran them or disappeared, when they come around for checking out permits and you are not on the household's blue card, you could still be arrested. And so this marks the distance that we've traveled. Every citizen must have an ID. It's not wrong to have an ID, but of course it was wrong to be made to carry a dom pass. Earlier on, I saw one of the centurions there fiercely resisting to have the tag, you know, these security tags that allow you to move around this building, strung around her neck. And I thought, well, that's very poignant because when the dom pass was extended to our mothers in the 50s, it was an A4 size, in an A4 size sachet, and they were expected to have it strung around their necks. So because it couldn't fit into any purse or bag, so it came with its own little holder. And so I thought that was very poignant for this centurion to resist this tag. The idea of being tagged seemed very offensive to her. Now, Madiba attended a conference in India soon after his release from prison. And when he came back, he said to us that at that conference, what impressed him most was that every speaker who made the most important points did so within 7 minutes. And he tried to introduce the rule in the movement that no one must speak more than 7 minutes because all the important points to be made can be made within 7 minutes. And so I remember I used to have very many difficulties with him whenever we had to put together a program for a funeral of an important personality. Because you know how these funerals are. There will be revolutionary poem, revolutionary song, and this. And so when I show him the program, he says, what is this all about? Scratch this out, scratch that out, and so on. So I'm not going to be long-winded this morning. Mine was really just to make these few remarks and to wish Tata Madiba a very, very happy birthday and speedy recovery. But of course, it would be remiss of me not to mention the fact that Aunt Sophie, who's here in our midst, was, if you remember that iconic photograph of the 1956 Women's March to Union Buildings. There were 4 of the leaders of that march, Lillian Goy, Helen Josephs, Rahima Musa, and Aunt Sophie de Bruyn, who were tasked with the responsibility of handing over the petitions to the then Prime Minister Stradom. And so today is a very special day, Aunt Sophie. It marks the distance that we've traveled from the dom pass to the smart card, and we're really privileged to have you in our midst this morning. With these words, I thank you very much for your attention.
All right, I hope you're enjoying this very special broadcast that we're bringing to you live at home. This is happening on your screens right now. We're going to take a break here on Morning Live.